Or I'm sorry, fellas, like a drama king. Where it seems like everything that day was just going terrible. You were feeling down in the dumps. Then out of nowhere, someone comes by, they give you a smile. Then all of a sudden, that feeling just totally melts away. Do not underestimate the power and influence of your acts of kindness. Mr. Toastmaster, Toastmaster members, and guests. Now typically, I am not a drama king, but this particular day, I was feeling pretty down in the dumps. And like many of us, when I'm feeling down in the dumps, I eat or I drink. In this particular case, I decided I was going to go to the Super America over on Weaver Lake Road and make me what I call a pepperdew. You might ask, what is a pepperdew? But that's a mixture of Dr. Pepper and Mountain Dew. So I walked in and I got my extra, extra large pepperdew. Apparently, as I was walking to the counter, I must have had on my forehead Drama King, because the person at the counter said to me, and she smiled, "Don't worry about it. I got that pop for you." It's like out of nowhere, I started hearing birds chirping. The clouds over my head began to part, and the sun came roaring in. My feelings of feeling down just totally evaporated. I left that store. That young lady probably had no idea how I was feeling and the difference of her act of kindness made on me that day. I started to think, wow. There's a story that I have that really illustrates the power of acts of kindness. I may have told you this story before. This guy by the name of Terrence Tapp. Terrence believes that God put on his heart to work specifically with teenagers, to help them get through the trials and challenges of being a teen. You know, as I look around this room, I see a lot of former teenagers in here right now, so you can probably relate to what it was like being a teenager. Dating, acne, all the peer pressure that you have to deal with. So what Terrence does now is that he goes to high schools and he gives motivational speeches to those kids. And he told me this one story of he went to this high school. He gave his usual speech as he always does. And one of the things that he always ends his meetings or his presentations with is, if you would like a dad hug, come down at the end of the presentation. This time was no different than any other time. There was a long line of students standing in line just to get a hug from Terrence. Well, Terrence knows over to his left, as he was hugging kids as they were coming through, that there was a guy dressed all in black pacing back and forth. He thought to himself, that's a little different, and just continued to give the kids a hug. As the last kid came through and he gave him the last hug, the young man in the black gothic outfit, black fingernails, zipped in front of him and pointed in his face and said, "You made me feel something." And then he gave him the biggest, strongest bear hug that Terrence had ever felt. And Terrence whispered in his ear, "You are the reason why I'm here." Apparently when he said that, that was too much for that young man to handle emotionally, and he flew out of the auditorium. And about 15 minutes later, the principal came into that auditorium, and said to Terrence, "Terrence, I just need to tell you about the young man that just left here." He left and went to his classroom. He went to a class where never, ever would the students there ever have a conversation with him. This particular day, the kids were talking about your presentation, and they asked him, "Did you receive a hug from Terrence today?" And the young man looked at them in silence, and then said, "That was the first time I have ever received a hug." Now think about that. He's saying he had never received a hug from his mother, his father, no one until that day Terrence gave him a hug. That touched my heart when I was told that story. And apparently it touched those kids' hearts. Because one by one, those kids went up to that young man and they each gave him a hug. Where apparently, once again, that was too much for him to handle emotionally, and once again, he ran out of the room. This time, he ran to the principal's office. Tears were coming down his eyes. The principal asked him, "What is wrong?" The young man picked up his book bag, reached in, and pulled out a 38 millimeter. And he said, with tears coming down his face, "Before this morning, I was planning to kill myself." And he set that gun on the principal's desk, turned around, and walked out of the room. Now, I'm not smart enough to know and to be able to explain to you what happens when you say something or you do something that is such an outstanding act of kindness that causes people to change their minds and to change their feelings. But I can tell you that it happens and that it's real. I challenge you, along with me, to be more aware of the people that are around us, to give people smiles at the grocery store. That as you're driving in traffic, just look over and just wave and say hello. Because we never know what people are dealing with in their lives. The losses that they may be having, the tough decisions that they must make right then and there. That your smile, your words of encouragement might give them the strength to make the right decision and choice. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say to you today, do not underestimate the power and the influence